Shaman's become a sort of generic word in the modern world that encompasses the core similarities found in spiritual or magical practices of ancient traditions. So it's morphing, it's a changing thing, it's expanding its own foundations. Briefly, what does a shaman offer society? Well, healing, physical, everyone goes for physical. Sometimes healing is acceptance of a physical state and not having anxiety and fear around it. So healing it's an emotional thing and it's a spiritual thing. For a shaman, spirit's sort of the core thing. So if you're healing the spirit, then everything else should flow all right, if you're breaking through the spiritual barriers and beliefs. Okay. We sort of provide, a modern shaman really can provide a conscious framework that gives meaning and understanding to events in individual lives and in the community and hence globally. Incredibly able to make sense of the exceedingly expanding chaos in our global community at the moment. And that's why there does seem to have been a rebirth in shamanism. Most importantly, a shaman provides a safe and validating space to people who've had a non-ordinary experience. Western materialism just junks nearly every non-ordinary experience. We've been the butt of many a joke and a lot of, unpleasantness, really. And so a shaman offers a place where you can talk about that and share it, and that you can shine light on it and validate it. It's a massive sort of offering to any individual who needs help with perhaps having had one non-ordinary experience and no framework to place it in. So shamans also facilitate the expansion of consciousness. For me, this is a prime shamanic tool, and that's through dream work. Everybody in every culture dreams. Whether they remember them or not, it's happening. It is a prime tool for helping us that materialism has virtually wiped from our consciousness. It's so important, and it easily yields such great gifts when you pay attention to it. And shamanic work is really, for me, about attention and intention. So what else can shamans do? We demonstrate that beliefs are not necessarily the truth, right? So because we will walk in non-ordinary realms, and beliefs can be a real barrier to that. So, yeah. Oracle offerings, perhaps, and in terms of like an oracle isn't, or even a prophecy, isn't necessarily about the future. It's about divine truth. So shamans have that tool from spirit. They can be very good pipes for that, as can a good medium, a channeler. So you can begin to already understand that this is a word that we're already accepting in other areas, but it has a few extra things to offer, perhaps. If you're talking about non-ordinary things, so storytelling, which is another thing that I do, it's laying a foundation for people of a live, loving, interactive universe in the hearts of anybody who wants to listen. So you're really expanding that. All right, enough about my brief explanation of shamanism, and I shall get on to what's happened to me a bit. I have always been clairaudient as long as I can remember. It's just been part of my life. Before I started school, I remember hearing voices and asking my mother about it. And she was obviously must have had her own moments, because she just told me to, if I heard someone calling me, to just stay quiet, stand still, and close my eyes and say, yes, I'm listening. So it was a little bit out of the norm. However, when I was very, very little, I had a repetitive dream about something large and green waiting to get me, watching me and waiting to get me. So if we fast forward to when I'm about 10 or 11, I had what is really a shamanic initiation event, a global shattering of my worldview. Shamans also are expected to have an understanding about death. a very great understanding about death, and it's probably one of the reasons I'm always attracted to near-death experiences, which I have not had. Death can also mean the death of your comprehension of reality, and that's what happened to me when I was around about 11, when I was out in a sunny afternoon in a paddock with a friend, and it was a very steep paddock surrounded by natural forest, beautiful spot. And she was down the bottom of the paddock, and we were sort of vaguely making our way home. I was getting towards the halfway mark when I realised I was looking not that far ahead of me at a large green leg. And I stopped still. You know, it's not what you expect to see in your field of vision. In the 1960s, I'm an older lady now. We're going back to a little girl. There was no talk in those times in Australia of reptilian aliens, I can assure you. So I'm looking at this huge green leg and really being impressed by the muscular tone to it. It had a boot on. I can remember he had boots on, and it went over his knee, and I had not seen that before either, and I didn't think it was done as it ought to have been done. I don't quite remember why not. Anyway, I continued very carefully moving my eyes up this green leg, which is sensible in my opinion. I didn't sort of take it all in at once. I just kept looking up and got to the chest area. And that sort of for me is when I dispute that this could possibly have been an hallucination, because I think that there was a structure across that chest which my brain had no comprehension or comparison to. It just simply did not, in today's terminology, compute. I did not know whether I was looking at skin or something over the skin. We were still green. Everything was green. He was holding something in his right arm. And so I sort of stopped there for a while trying to work it out, and my brain literally gave a shrug and went, I just don't know. I don't know what this is. I've got nothing here. So I kept going up, and it was when I hit his eyes that he realised that I could see him. And the eyes were, we actually don't have that colour, but it was sort of a mix of orange and gold. And he had the full reptilian, diamond-shaped iris. It was, as I said, that was when he realised that I could see him. Until then, he thought he was invisible. So I've been told later that at that moment he would have had to have opened a channel into my mind, which is exactly what happened. He spoke directly into my mind. And the first thing he did was to reassure me that he had no intention of hurting me, that it was a great big mistake. I had not been able to, I should not have been able to see him. He was as horrified in that transaction that I could see him as I was, because, gosh, there was nothing that would prepare a child of 11 in Australia for seeing that. He'd been watching us play. That's what he told me. He'd just been watching us play. And I was so rapt. This is also something that near-death experiences will describe, that time stops. When we made eye contact, time stopped. There aren't ways to explain what that feels like as a sensation. It's an amazing sensation to have just time stop. At some point, he must have just let go of my mind, and I sort of heard my friend still playing, walking along, talking to herself down the bottom of the paddock, and I slid my eyes sort of sideways to go, hey, can you see this? But she had her head down. She never saw him, and I slid my eyes back to him. He'd disappeared. There was nowhere he could have gone. He'd have had to have been going breakneck speed to meet the trees, and that was that. I was a bit of a goody-goody. My sister always informed me, and I was truthful as a child. So my family accepted that something weird had happened, and Dad thought he might have been a yowie, but informed me they should be hairy. He didn't have a hair on his body, so that didn't work. And it just stayed there because, and it's looking back in life, is you realise that shattered everything. I knew at that point that we weren't the most perfected species in the universe. This thing could turn itself invisible, talk straight into my head, and its form was stunningly crafted, humanoid. So anyway, that was the beginning, really. And from there, I'm going to have to speed up, or I am going to run out of time. I've had an enormous amount of non-ordinary experiences across a raft of areas. Psychic stuff, mediumistic stuff. I'm a lucid dreamer, precognitive dreams, out-of-body experiences, heightened intuition. It's just been part of my life. And it's everyday part of my life still. Because of the clairaudience, more than anything probably, it's still very there. In 2009, I'm really fast forwarding now, I'm leaving out heaps, but 2009, Spirit said to me, we want you to write a book about, just get down some of the major stuff that's happened in a book, which I did do. It's a very badly written book. However, it's available and it's in the list. And I couldn't understand why until my cousin sent round an email in 2010 looking for people to go to a shamanic event with her in Hawaii. And I had no interest in this particular shamanic person. I'd been lent a book and didn't finish it, wasn't interested. But I was very interested in spending a fortnight with my cousin, whom we hadn't had a lot to do with each other since we were little. So I thought, righto, I'm off, I'll go. And off I tootled, unsuspecting, not interested, thinking, oh, well, the meditation will be fun. And when we got there and we walked into the room, it was literally like I had come home. I felt like I knew everybody. And some amazing things happened in that time. Gosh. In fact, probably one of the biggest things that happened there was I actually had a vision, which wasn't part of any led meditation. It was just a spontaneous vision where the entire room was packed out with my cousin and myself, with all of our ancestors. There's this just enormous spirit body, and standing at the front was her father. And I heard a voice say, the clan has 2 children present, with such pride. And here's me, know nothing about shamanism, not interested. And I'm sort of thinking, Scotland, what are they doing here? I'm not realising it was an actual spiritual clan I was looking at. Because I'm going to go back just a titch and say that I had spent 20 years studying the works of a man named Murdo MacDonald Bain, whom I came across quite early in life. And he's a fabulous spiritual teacher, particularly 2 books. I've given the website. Everything he's ever done is available for free download. You don't have to purchase it. You can just download it. If you started off with the book Beyond the Himalayas, you'll be good. I found it in the travel section in a little bookshop out in the middle of nowhere, and it was like it lit up. It made just total sense to me. But Murdo MacDonald Bain always taught that you don't need anything between you and divinity. You don't need a structured religion. You certainly don't need ceremony and dogma and form. And I've been doing this for 20 years, right? So all of a sudden I'm getting this enormous pressure in 2010 to undertake a spiritual apprenticeship. And it's horrifying to me. I don't want to do it because I've spent 20 years saying I don't need to do ceremony, get lost. I don't need that. I can talk to God, what I call God, which is the whole universe, a divine consciousness. I don't need to do this. The pressure was enormous until one day I was on a walk at home arguing. I just kept arguing with them. I don't want to do this. What's the point of having studied that I don't need all of this? And I went on this walk and literally it was raining crow feathers. I mean, there was no body. I was walking for blocks. Everywhere I went, there was oodles of crow feathers. It was amazing. And I knew I had to join up, so I did. First 6 months, I was still kicking and screaming. I did not want to be there. However, I had a dream of Murdo MacDonald Bain, and he told me, and he said to me in this dream, the reason you needed to know that you didn't need all of those things was so you used them correctly. And it made such sense because it meant that I didn't give my power to a tool, to a ceremony. I just focused my power, and I got shamanically assisted in intensifying that power. There's a great danger in religions, as we all know, and obviously in shamanism too, that we give our power away to the peripheral stuff that's meant to actually focus power. And you can get lost down that rabbit hole real fast. So I'd had a pretty good training in how to use shamanic tools and to how to ask them to be part of that was part of the training too. And of course, I guess I should mention, anyway, I kept on doing shamanism. I love it. Okay, there's a lot of people who say to you a shaman isn't a shaman if they say they're a shaman. There's all sorts of different beliefs about what it is. It's simply having a relationship with a living, conscious and loving universe and knowing how to set your intent, to choreograph energy in a positive manner, for influencing things, for finding answers to things, for understanding, for comprehension, and for expanding your own loving self, I suppose. In the end, it becomes a really deep understanding of the one life in all life. You know, there is no separation. If I could give you the core teaching for me of a whole lifetime of amazing different things, it would be that we don't actually have connections. You know, we're all about connections in the modern world. How everything's a web and it's all connected, and there might be a web as such, but I woke up one day and a voice said, intelligent beings don't have connections. And I realised it meant that we're all the one life. It isn't a connection. We're all part of a infinite diversity is fine. It's an infinite diversity of the one life, and it's in everything. It's why a shaman can talk to a rock, and I do. Because consciousness, you know, you could say like my table doesn't have consciousness, but consciousness has my table. Can you understand how that twists around so that people can go suddenly hear, oh, well, you know, I need to get my brakes tested. It's because consciousness is flowing through the atomic structure, the void in the atomic structure of the entire material realm. That's what I've learned. Now, near-death experiences often mention that on the other side they know everything and it's so simple a child could understand it. And pretty much that's why, in my opinion, what they understand is everything is the one thing but in infinite diversity. It's an amazing universe. I like to keep my stuff really short and simple because the core teaching of shamanism for me is to try and, I don't know, put little cracks, you know, into the egg of materialistic patterning so that a little bit of light can shine through and people can look at things in a different perspective and maybe open themselves up to things that are different. I eventually came across, whilst I was doing shamanism, I came across Bruce Lipton and oh gosh, what's that name? It's Williams, but I can never remember his Christian name. Robert Williams as well, which is all about beliefs. Bruce Lipton's about the biology of belief with his book, and that the beliefs, what we choose to believe forms our reality. That's in the Bible. As you believe, so shall it be unto you. It's so true. But when you start to chip away at beliefs that don't actually enhance your life or the life of the community or the life of the whole planet, it's an amazing process. So I'd always recommend Bruce Lipton, and I'd always recommend Robert Williams and his process of Psych-K, which is an actual physical process of changing belief systems for people. So I came across that, and I also came across, God bless him, a man called Professor John Mack. Now, if nobody's met him or knows of him, get on YouTube. This guy was a legend. He's gone now, unfortunately, but in the early 1990s, he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, for one thing, but he was also held the chair of psychiatry at Harvard. He was in the top of his field. And he was approached by a well-known person in the UFO sort of community to do a study on, I think he did, his original study was on about 50 people who had repetitive alien abduction experiences. And I did hear him say somewhere along the line that he pretty much thought, I'll soon sort this out. And to his credit, admitted that he could not. He did this study and came up with some amazing stuff that, for me, I read this book when I was doing shamanism, so I was already there. He talks in his work about, at some point he realised that people who had these lifelong experiences end up being called to shamanism. Isn't that fascinating? They go to shaman, they're interested in it. Okay, and I find that fascinating because I wasn't called to shamanism, but boy, it came hunting me with a big stick. So there's obviously some sort of cohesive pattern in this training of alien abduction, etc. And he also said that he found near-death experiences and UFO experiences to have primarily the same pattern. And from there I got on to, now I've lost my place here, Karen.
That's okay. You're nearly at half an hour
anyway. I'm nearly at half an hour. I also got onto a Facebook group called the Contact Modalities, right? And this was actually used to be called Free, and it was started by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the Apollo 14 astronaut, who became an astronaut of inner space as well as outer space. A fascinating man in his own right, just amazing. Now, they did a study that they duplicated now for Kenneth Ring's book, which was the Omega Project, and he took a statistical study comparing 100 near-death experiences with 100 UFO contact experiences, and they repeated it, but with nearly 4,000 people across the globe who'd had alien, in particular, non-human intelligent contact. And it was fascinating. They duplicated all his results, right? So what the results, I'll just run through them really quickly for you, strongly increased in people who had this pattern, so near-death and UFO alien contact, concern with spiritual matters, desire to help others, compassion for others, my appreciation of the ordinary things in life, ability to love others, tolerance of others, insight into the problems of others, concern with the welfare of the planet Earth, understanding of what life is all about, concern with ecological matters, conviction that there is life after death. All of them, the same result. Strongly decreased was concern with material things, interest in organised religion, I'd never had, fear of death, and desire to become a well-known person. Okay, so it's a fascinating little study. It's an amazing book, which I would highly recommend once again. So perhaps I should stop and people can ask questions.